In the case of the family's disintegration, the effect is obvious, but the cause, perhaps, is more elusive than Ardrey suggests. That would be Ardrey. Cause and effect have, however, I'm going to have to defend from the cat here, have, however, been clearly established between the psychological overload of big cities and the loss of sensitivity and increase in fear. Another signal, which explains somewhat the ability of big city dwellers to ignore screams from the streets or muggings. It has also been established, among other animals at least, that it is the effect of natural arrangements, not the inoffensiveness of natural dispositions, that minimizes violent behavior in a natural world. There are more concrete and measurable ways in which we are personally getting negative feedback from our centralized state. One is the pesticide residues in our diet. Another is the chemicals and noise in our air. And finally, on a personal wavelength, there has been the disappearance of leisure. This is not to say we have no leisure time as usually measured, but that the demands made on us not so much by our occupations as by our new lifestyle and its multitude of trinkets have left us slaves to our new duty as good citizens to consume as much as inhumanly possible. Henry David Thoreau once said that we pay for the waste of excess property not with our money, but with our lives. What has appeared recently as a natural limit to further centralization is the finite quality of our lives and time. Even when we cash in all our leisure, and even the hours we would sleep, we still can only pay and consume a finite amount. On the public and ecological wavelengths, the signals of centralization's failing are, of course, coming in loud and clear. The pollution of our environment is a popular cause nowadays, but unlike most popular causes, it is not going to be forgotten when its novelty passes, because it may prove to be a problem whose solution is incompatible with modern American lifestyle. The biosphere, centralized industry, and the centralized economy are all systems far beyond our understanding, even with the aid of the most advanced computers. It is clear, however, that all three are now interrelated, and we cannot crank down on one valve without affecting the system throughout. The recent dollar devaluations are unquestionably related in part. How much is unmeasurable through paths untraceable to pollution controls, to occupational dissatisfaction, to personal fear, to all the interrelated systems. We know we have been on insecure ground for a good while. It is well documented, says Georg Borgstrom, that the United States has lost 1/4 of its topsoil since the prairies were first broken by the plow. And yet there seems to be no alternative to continuing in the same direction. We are riding an enormous machine, roaring along at blinding but accelerating speed, a machine whose brakes, that's spelled wrong, the few times they have been tried have proven unreliable. They either grab or slip. We do not dare try to stop even though we can barely steer this machine, which seems to have a mind of its own, and the gauge measuring the panic pressure is on the red. Should the most constructive thing we could do for the runaway prove to be to jump off and at least take from its fearful momentum our own weight, then we can hardly trust the man or group in the driver's seat to tell us. The government will be the very last to jump because it is now part and parcel of the machine. Their fates are welded. Most of ours are too. There are still some, however, to whom the roaring machine, if noticed at all, is noticed as a rare speck in the sky. Such are the Tsimbaga, recently presented as a lesson to the scientific world by Scientific American. The Tsimbaga, an agrarian tribe of central New Guinea, are an extreme example of ecological strength, stability, and morality in these ravaging days. By looking at representatives from the other extreme, so far from us perhaps, we may derive some idea of the continuum possible between them and ourselves. Quote, we can place the Tsimbaga and other primitive, quote-unquote, horticulturalists early in such successions, ecologically anthropocentric. The Tsimbaga are politically and economically autonomous. They neither import nor export foodstuffs, and it is necessary for them to maintain as wide a range of crops in their gardens as they wish to enjoy. Economic self-sufficiency and production for use protect ecological integrity in more important ways. For one thing, the management of cultivation is only slightly concerned, if at all, with events in the outside world. On the contrary, it tends almost exclusively to the needs of the cultivators and the species sustaining them. Moreover, in the absence of exotic energy sources, the ability of humans to abuse the species on which they depend is limited by those species, because it is only from them that energy for work can be derived. In such systems, however, abuse seldom need to be repaid by declining yields, because they are quickly signaled to those responsible by subtler signs of environmental degradation. Information feedback from the environment is sensitive and rapid in small autonomous ecological systems, and such systems are likely to be rapidly self-correcting. The gentle, delicate contact the Zimbaga enjoy with their environment is as different from recent practices of centralized agriculture and industry as it could be. Evolutionary experience bodes ill for him who is overly rough on his environment. Quote, I have alluded to the arguments of Margalef and Howard Odum suggesting that in nature, ecosystems selection is not merely a matter of competition between individuals or species occupying the same level in the food chain. Rather, it favors those species that contribute positively to the stability and efficiency of the entire ecosystem. Roy A. Rappaport, the author of this extraordinary article, goes on to discuss the ominous implications of the evolutionary lesson. It seems to me that the trend toward decreasing ecosystem complexity and stability, e.g. monolithic cultivation of corn, I'm not sure if I supplied that or he did, he probably did, rather than threats of pollution, overpopulation, or even energy famine, is the ultimate ecological problem immediately confronting man. It also may be the most difficult to solve, since the solution cannot easily be reconciled with the values, goals, interests, and political and economic institutions prevailing in industrialized and industrializing nations. And yet the machine charges on. In their crusader's zeal, industrialized nations have shouted their message to the world with all the bluster of a child who knows he is about to be caught lying, but who has not quite given up. It may not be improper to characterize as ecological imperialism the elaboration of a world organization that is centered in industrial societies and degrades the ecosystems of the agrarian societies it absorbs. Ecological imperialism is, in some ways, similar to economic imperialism. In both cases, there is a flow of energy and material from the less organized system to the more organized one, and both may simply be different aspects of the same relation. Both may also be masked by the same euphemisms, among which progress and development are prominent. Again, I need to find places to stop, so there I'll stop for today.